Welcome to ShipFam. On today's episode, Luke and I discuss the software engineering interview process, our experiences interviewing throughout our careers, and more. Please review us wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on Twitter at KCC Rogers and at Luke_Baghetti. I'm actually in a hotel in New York City right now, so we're both East Coast at the moment. I am interviewing with a company that flew me out, which honestly feels kind of old school in a funny way. I don't think I've flown out.
Kind of awesome though, right? It's like the VIP treatment.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm kind of enjoying it. I mean, the flight was brutal. It was an overnighter. I had no space in my seating. Yeah, I picked that though. I kind of would rather have an unpleasant night's sleep than waste like half a day.
Sure.
But anyway, the whole interview process has got me thinking about interviewing again. And that's just what I'd love to talk about on the show today. And kind of, we could both share our experiences running interviews, participating in interviews, and share some of the candid details of what that looks like for folks.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I first interviewed as a new grad at a couple different places. I got into Amazon and Google and like one or two startups. Amazon was hilarious, by the way. Weirdest job interview process of my life. They brought us all in at the same time, the like cohort of new grad candidates, and they put us in a giant room and put us on sub teams of like 2 to 3 people, and then gave us a joint project to work on. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. So we're like ostensibly competing with each other as candidates for the same positions on a group project. And then in my group, it was 3 of us, and this poor girl, within like 5 minutes, she decided she was in way over her head and wasn't equipped to work on the project, and was like very visibly emotionally distraught by the whole thing, and pulled the testers aside and said she wanted to leave. So it's just me and the other dude looking kind of shell-shocked. Like it's, I don't know, like our fellow candidate had been disappeared or something.
Just like disappeared into the woods.
Yeah, it worked out okay though, because we all took our per diem and together went to the Seattle Space Needle and had dinner up there on Amazon's dime as a group. Just kind of ad hoc after we were all traumatized by this bizarre process.
It's so weird. I just have to ask, is this Space Needle like actually cool, or is it just like a tourist trap?
So here's my pro Space Needle strat. Go super early in the day, and it's like $30 for an unlimited pass, or at least it was 8 years ago. And then they've got a little coffee shop up there, they've got Wi-Fi, and it's got a good view. Just park up there and work the whole time. It's a great spot to work from. You just post up with your laptop, you got this awesome view, and you only paid $30, which across the whole day is just fine. So that's my Space Needle trick. The Amazon interview process, it was, I don't remember the details, of course, it's been too long, but it was just a basic coding project, build a system that does these few things, pretty back-end centric, no GUI or anything like that. What was your new grad interview process? It occurs to me I don't really know your career trajectory here.
Yeah, dude, I did not have a new grad interview process. I was running an e-commerce, like a small e-commerce business out of my basement.
This is your headphone startup.
Yeah, it's a headphone thing. We could spend an entire episode on that, but the short version is that while I was going to school for mechanical engineering, I had figured out that I could take pieces of wood and cut holes in them and then sell them to people who have really expensive headphones for a lot of money.
Nice.
And that's essentially what I was doing while I was in school. And unfortunately, the ceiling on that was pretty low. So it never grew past like, I think the most it made in a year was like 30 grand a year. But like in college, you feel like a baller, and then you get out of college and you're like, wow, this is basically not worth my time at all. So it's like kind of an interesting situation.
I mean, as far as indie projects go, 30K puts you on the map.
30K is pretty baller. Yeah, I know. But the thing is, and this is what I realized later, is that business, like I really loved doing the product design and development and like talking with customers and stuff, but I hated just cranking the stuff out, because since it's a physical product business and I was manufacturing everything in-house, I just by myself was essentially just like sitting down and building these things over and over and over again. And it's just like such mind-numbing, like boring work. And then of course it never made enough money for me to like hire somebody to actually do the work. So it was like in this like really weird business purgatory. But anyway, when I finally got a chance to interview for my first dev role, it's kind of a weird series of events. At that time, I'd been posting on Twitter, actually, I think quite a bit at that point. And actually, no, let me back that up. I started posting on Twitter afterwards. So I was spending a lot of time in the Flutter Discord group and on the Flutter repo, posting all kinds of issues and stuff like that. And this was before I like swore off from contributing to Flutter for so many reasons that we could get into another day. But
another episode.
Another episode. But I was in the Flutter Slack group, and this guy named Luke Freeman had posted that he was looking for engineers in the United States. And I reached out to him, and I found out that he was actually the co-founder of Posse, who was famous for building the first production Flutter app for Hamilton, the musical.
Nice.
And a lot of people don't know this is a little inside baseball, but Posse then split into two companies, Very Good Ventures and the Yaka. And Luke Freeman was running the Yaka. And everybody knows, in the Flutter world, knows Very Good Ventures.
Yep,
like, that's a very obvious name. And so when I interviewed with him, the interview process is pretty basic. I got on the phone with him. He was like, "Hey, I've seen your posts on GitHub. I like your attitude. I've seen your GitHub repos. Just want to talk a little bit." So we talked a little bit, and he's like, "All right, so here's the deal. I'm starting this agency. I'd like you to come on as the first contract engineer. We don't know when our first contract is going to come through, but if you don't mind hanging out a little bit, we'll call you up when we're ready to go." And I was like, "Yep, that sounds good." So at that time, he had actually invited a couple other people that he knew to the Yaka, and he started pounding pavement trying to get contracts. And they were taking like a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, 3 months for the first contract to sign. And everybody else who he had essentially said, "Hey, do you want to do this thing with me?" Eventually they were like, "Listen, man, I can't sit around and wait to keep doing this." Meanwhile, I had just launched that crazy cryptocurrency project where I had all those coins, and I was like slowly selling like $1,000 worth of coins a month. And that was like basically just like funding my food and rent. And so I was just sitting there like learning Flutter, talking to this guy every day who had essentially spearheaded the Hamilton app while he was like pounding the pavement trying to get his first contract. And so by the time the first contract came around, I was like the only one who was still talking to him.
Nice. That's awesome.
And so then he's like, "All right, time to do the first contract." And I was like, "Okay, great, let's do it." So we jumped in, just like slayed the first contract, completely slayed it. And he was like, "Wow, that went pretty well." That's my recollection anyway. I should talk to him and just do a little fact checking. That's the way
we could bring him on the show. We could have like a roast Luke episode.
Yeah, I know. Just like totally like roast me. There's plenty of people I've worked with who could absolutely roast me. But then after that was done, even he was burnt out on the whole thing. He was like, "Man, I pounded pavement for 6 months and like got one contract. It was really tough." And so then he had a friend, and also he had a friend who wanted to start a venture-backed startup. And so then he went to do that. And then he transitioned me off into an agency that his friend owned, and I worked for him for a while. So when I got started, I never had like a traditional interview process. It wasn't until I actually hit Tonal that I had like a traditional interview process.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think that's the best way to do it, is to land a job through like a social or professional network.
Totally.
Because, oh God, I'm so exhausted right now. I have been kind of 25%ing this job hunt right now, taking it slow because I'm not really under any financial or time pressure. And it's still just like wearing me out mentally. What was Tonal's process like? And I know you ran interviews at Tonal a lot too.
Yeah, so we can do I took an interview and I ran an interview. So from the I took an interview standpoint, I'm trying to remember exactly how it worked. I believe there was a screener with one of the recruiters, and Tonal actually hired their own recruiters. They had a policy of no external recruiters. So I had a screener with a recruiter, and then a screener with the person who was trying to hire, who ended up being my boss. That was Max. And people who have been on Flutter Twitter long enough have probably run into Max at some point. He doesn't post often, but when he does, it's usually a banger. And then after that, I did a UI interview with Gabriel Peel. Gabriel is famous for being a co-founder of Lottie, the Lottie framework,
Yeah.
animation framework, and also being the guy who wrote that famous blog post about how Airbnb was essentially rage quitting React Native. So those are like the two things that Gabriel was sort of famous for. And he was running the show in terms of Android at Tonal, which was the trainer, the actual thing that gets mounted to the wall and has the big screen on it. And then after that, I did another UI interview with a really talented engineer named Natalie, who is actually the first person I know who got hired to a Kotlin multi-platform mobile project, which is kind of
that's
crazy.
wild.
Yeah, super crazy. And then I'm trying to think of, and then after that was probably the most interesting part, which was I had an interview with, I can't remember what his role was. I'm going to just call it head of engineering or like VP of engineering, just for the sake of the conversation. And this guy was super interesting because the interview was not technical at all. It was literally like, hey man, how's it going? Right? Okay. And the guy was just like super nice. And I can't even remember what we talked about, but I remember leaving that portion of the interview just feeling like I was glowing.
That's
right?
awesome.
Just because the guy was just like so nice, so positive, so fun to be around. And I don't know if I don't know. I'd be interested to know from his point of view, like what he learned during that portion of the interview. But I know that I learned that I felt really good about the people that I would be working with.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was pretty cool.
On the panel, they often have somebody, they don't word it quite this way, but it's basically just a Riz check. He could have been your Riz check. They'll call it like culture fit or something like that.
I think he was a little bit of that, but I think that he was also doing a little bit of sales too.
Yeah, the Riz check guy usually doubles as a, let's make sure this guy wants to join the company.
Yeah. So that actually went really well. Oh, one funny thing about that, the next part of the process there is that they then went into negotiation, and I reached out to the guy I worked with previously, Luke Freeman, and I was like, hey, they're asking me what I think I should be making, and I don't know what to say. And he was like, oh, say like 150. And I was like, I don't know, man. And so I came back to them, I said 160, and they were like, oh, okay, how about 5 figures more than that?
What?
And I was like, yes. So they actually counteroffered higher than what I had asked for.
Mm-hmm. Did you find out later what the band was? Maybe they were just giving you bottom of band.
I think, well, this is what happened after that is I think you're right. I think they gave me bottom of band because then on my next performance review, they gave me like an insane pay bump. It was like 9%, right?
Nice. Yep.
And so I think I lowballed them unintentionally. And then I think that they did bottom of band, and then I think that they probably got middle of band after that.
Yeah. I don't know how to play
Here's another interesting thing about that too, because they originally wanted me to move to Toronto. And I was like, yeah, I'll move to Toronto. But I was really only saying that because I just wanted to do the interview process to kind of see what it was like.
Yep.
And then before the interview started, I was like, I'm sorry, man, I'm just not going to move to Toronto. So I just don't want this to be a waste of time for you guys. And at that time, it was like right in the middle of COVID when everybody was working remote.
Yep.
And so they were like, listen, we really wanted to hire for Toronto, but we're just not going to worry about it right now. So then the other thing I did, which was interesting, is in my contract, I had them put me in my location as remote. So I think I was the only employee working at Tonal that had remote in my contract.
That was smart to get in the contract because they totally will strong arm you into coming in when they do open. Now, to be fair, I'm not somebody who's totally against that as a shill for in-office work myself.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know how to play the negotiation
it's a little bit
game.
It's a little different if you're like, and I'll just say this about that. So, if I lived in a place like San Francisco, I would absolutely be going in, at least twice a week, right?
Yeah.
2 to 3 times a week is what I would want to do for going in. But like where I live, there just aren't jobs
Yeah, you'd have to move
like
to a location.
use my skills.
Yeah.
I pretty much would have to move like a minimum 4-hour drive away to be able to access jobs.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I will say is when they were trying to figure out my salary, they were like, okay, we do location-based pay. And I said, well, that's interesting because you're not going to find any actual information for my location because this job does not exist in my state. Like it literally just does not exist, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, so what we'll do is we'll find the closest metropolitan area that has
was that New York City?
Yeah. It wasn't New York City. It was almost as good. It was Boston.
Nice.
So
okay.
Boston is what they use for the leveling, and it put me at like if San Francisco is like 100%, and New York City is like 95%, Boston's like 90%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely.
And then the rest of the United States is like 40% or like 50%. You know what I mean?
That's amazing. You're saying they're like paying like a third or a quarter the cost of living.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what to do about negotiation if I get the 2 offers I'm hoping to land in the next week or 2. I've never really played the negotiation game. For my Google job, I just took their standard package. Then for Cruise Automation, where I went for product management after, once again, I just took their offer at face value. I don't know, the part I can't get over is I live pretty cheap, even spending what feels careless to me. And tech salaries saturate that, so it always feels a little weird trying to like ask for more.
It's so fast. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, at Cruise, for example, they were paying me $144K base cash, and then it was like if you include stocks and perf bonus, it comes out to about 200 total. And I actually made friends with the one of the hiring managers, and like at the end of my time there when he was leaving and I was about to leave too, he's like, hey, I figured I'd just let you know now that we're not working together anymore and it wouldn't feel unprofessional. But like you totally could have levered the heck out of us. We kind of lowballed you. So
yeah. And I will say there's something I can say about that, which is I had experience really leveling up my rates when I was a contractor. And the way that worked is I essentially would only take new contracts at a higher rate.
Yeah.
And so I was able to ladder up my rates in a manner of like 3 months. Like I think I laddered up my rate from like $40 an hour to like $80 an hour in something like 3 months just by leapfrogging my previous rate every time I got a new client.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, it's much harder to do that when you're working for an employer.
Yeah.
Or you're trying to become an employee. But what you can do, or what I would do, and it's really hard right now, to be fair, but I would just get multiple offers and just take the highest offer and tell the lowest person that that's what your highest offer is. Let them go higher, and then go to the next person, give them like the new highest, then go to the first person, give them the new highest. And that's like the best way I've heard of to ladder up from a strong position. And so, and you probably already know this, but some places, if you have like a competing offer on the table already, they will fast track your interview and they will just like put you in the fast lane in order to get you to the end of the interview process as quickly as possible. And sometimes, in some cases, it can take an interview process from like 3 to 4 weeks down to like 3 to 4 days.
Yep, I'm fast tracking with VM right now, and that's actually half on their side. I told them I was in stage with somebody else. I'm actually waiting to hear back from them. I did like a final take home for Fizz, and they said they're going to get back to me in the next couple weeks. Honestly, they've been kind of dragging their feet, which was a bit annoying. But because I'm waiting for that other offer, and I don't know what deadline that's going to be on, assuming I get it. VM was like, okay, we're going to fast track you. And they're also trying to close out the position by end of month before the hiring manager goes on paternity leave. So they're fast tracking the heck out of this. I think I cold applied to them a bit over a week ago. And right now I'm in New York for the on-site tomorrow. So that's pretty fast.
Yeah, that is fast. Also, it's kind of nice that you get to do it on-site. I never got to do an on-site interview. And so I bet that's pretty fun.
Yeah, it is fun. I've done it a couple times. I actually, in the past, maybe not the nicest thing to do, but I've actually gone on sites 90% just because I wanted a free, 3-day trip somewhere. Like, Microsoft flew me out to Seattle when really all I wanted to do was see my friend in Seattle.
Actually, I just realized I was asked to do an on-site right after I graduated from university. But I don't talk about it because it ended up not happening. But the short version is I was posting random stuff that I was building, like CNC routers for that headphone business, on Reddit's r/engineering subreddit.
Yep.
And some guy from one of the Google Ventures backed companies in Silicon Valley reached out to me, and he's like, hey, we've got a bunch of engineers, but like none of them actually know how to fucking build anything. And like clearly you're just like building stuff without thinking about it. So like, do you want to come to an on-site? And I was like, I guess so. And so I was waiting to hear back from him, and I went and looked at the company, and it was like one of those vertical takeoff and landing, like robotic VTOL companies. Cool. And I was like, dude, that would be fucking rad. And it was so funny because at that time, I know it didn't actually turn anything, but at that time, I mean, I went to a redneck university in the middle of nowhere. It's a good university, but it's still a redneck university. And all my friends like had been getting straight A's, and I had been like burning through like D's, C's, and B's, right?
Yeah.
And I get to the end, and they're all interviewing at like the local paper mill, and I've got like this guy from like San Francisco who's like, "Can I fly you out to work on VTOLs?" And I'm like, "What the fuck is going on?" And like, I think that's like when I realized that like the game just gets stacked completely differently if you just like play it totally differently.
Yeah, I think there's ways to stand out. And I'm pretty hesitant to give the audience here advice like do X, do Y, because I think me, and it sounds like also for you, it's kind of something that just happened. So I don't know how the causality works. I don't know if it's something you can just like choose to do, or if it's something that kind of happens by accident, gets picked up on. I mean, on this
I think the only thing I will say is like, if you are talking to like-minded people about doing cool things, and it's in a skill that somebody might want to hire for at some point, like they will find you, right?
Yeah.
So if you're posting on Twitter about software engineering, you know, someone who needs a software engineer will find you eventually, is like the most trite example of that.
Yeah, it's tough though, because I've been on the other side of that, and there's kind of people I can smell who have like taken hustle advice. I can smell hustle advice. And if I see somebody posting in a way that feels like they're just trying to follow some hustle template, it's just like an immediate ick.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so what I would say is, you know, when I was posting on Reddit about the engineering stuff, when I post on Twitter, I'm literally just posting random shit. Like there is not a single little bit of, like there's no master plan there. I'm literally just like, here's this dumb thing that I'm working on, and that's it. And I know exactly what you mean, because I know the people that you're talking about, and they turn me off too. And my guess is they turn off a lot of people.
Yeah, that's why I'm afraid to tell the audience, like, do X, do Y, because the second you're following some template...
It's probably, if they were going to do it, if they were going to do it, they would have already been doing it, I guess is kind of the...
Yeah, maybe the best way I could...
in your favor.
Maybe the best way I could word it is... Take the things you're excited about that also feel marketable, and don't be afraid just to do them and talk about doing them. But on some level, it does have to be the stuff you're excited about, or you need to be a pretty good actor. One or the other.
Yeah, I think maybe even another way to say it, even more basic, is don't be afraid to make friends.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. Still the same caveat, though. That's why I really want to try and give folks advice, but I'm always so scared of it because... I have the advantage of being obnoxiously social, like just painfully social. So I've got this huge network of people where I can hit them up with like pretty naked ulterior motives of like, hey, can you refer me to this place? Or, hey, do you know of any job openings, et cetera, et cetera. Or even sometimes it's literally, hey, can I crash on your couch? I'm in town for a week. And I can get away with that because they've known me for like a year, anywhere from a year to 10 years. And they know that I've already hit them up like 10 to 20 times purely for the sake of shooting the shit. So if you're sincerely hitting people up because you want to build a relationship with them, purely because you're interested in talking to them, hearing about them, and exchanging ideas, and then on like the 21st time you're like, yo, can I sleep on your couch? You can usually get away with it.
Sure. Yeah, I know. Definitely don't try to use people. Don't try to be someone you're not. But no, I agree with you. This is more about me just saying what happened in my life instead of giving advice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm probably piling too many disclaimers on here, but I want to warn the audience, especially if there's some pretty young guys out there who are just looking up to us, which learn from us, but don't necessarily look up to us. We're just random dudes. But random dudes who have been through a bit more than some of the junior guys. But yeah, I don't know.
Just say,
I don't know what advice
if you see this, yeah, I guess the only thing I would say is if you see this work for somebody, don't be surprised, as I guess all I would really say about that.
Yeah, to jump on a specific thing, I've actually been kind of pleasantly surprised by how many screeners have picked up on my Flutter contributions. Like, I put it on the bottom of my resume almost as an afterthought, because I thought, this might come off kind of lame. Is anybody going to take this seriously? And almost every screening call I've done, they have proactively pointed that out and been really excited and being like, hey, I really want to hear more about this. Can you tell me about your contributions? Which is probably half the smell if my contributions were like, I added my name to the list of contributors and fixed a typo, versus I did something real. They're clearly trying to make sure I've done something real, but then they also seem legitimately really excited to hear about my work. And for example, the VM recruiter kind of mentioned that I was by far the most Flutter interested candidate they'd seen yet. Sounds like they've mostly just been trying to pitch React Native devs on flipping over to Flutter.
So this person has gotten a couple of jobs just from like sending this link to someone. And it's basically a link to the Flutter authors file. And they're like in the top 10.
Yeah,
or
that
in
is
like
pretty
the top
sweet.
8 of people in the Flutter authors file. And so it reminds me of like what you're talking about. But like this was his version of that.
Yep. Where are you and where am I? I'm looking because I know I'm on here.
I don't think I even am on here. I'm on with some of the Dart ones, but I don't think I'm on.
Oh man, get flexed on
Flutter.
Actually,
dude, I know. If I had done it early, it would have been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to dive a bit more into the interview process itself and to talk about a few of the places I've interviewed with, I've noticed a lot of them are doing HackerRank/LeetCode style questions. And honestly, it feels kind of weird for a front-end interview. I kind of get it for a back-end interview, but it's stuff like I'm writing Dart with for loops and then like a mutable variable that I'm changing on every iteration of the for loop. And I don't think I've done that in Flutter code, like production Flutter code, in well over a year. It just feels so removed from the job. But I guess it's just kind of an IQ test disguised in something that feels a lot less kind of politically uncomfortable than an IQ test. I don't know. Do you have thoughts there?
That's like a lot of what these things are. Like a lot of these kinds of questions, they're just designed to try to figure out, if you've seen anything like this or if you can think through it. But unfortunately, I do get abused. Like I did an interview at Amazon and I was told like, okay, this is a front end role. There's not going to be data structures and algorithms, right?
Yep.
Then I got to the interview and it was 3 interviewers back to back, all data structures and algorithms. And I got to the end and the recruiter got on the call with me and she's like, hey, you did not get the right answer in these. And I was like, hold up a second. I was told there'd be no DSA. The whole interview is DSA. So that's the first thing. The second thing is in the first interview, I asked the guy clarifying questions, and he actually didn't know how to answer the clarifying questions. Right?
No.
And then in the second interview, this person gave me a hard time for talking about using a hash set when she wanted me to use a hash map where all of the values were true, which is basically just like a redneck hash set. What? And they were basically saying that like hash set wasn't a thing, right?
What is going on here?
I was like, I honestly feel like I'm in an episode of Black Mirror where I don't really understand what was going on your side. And I was like, I gotta be clear. I'm not even salty about not getting the job. It was just really fucking weird.
Yeah. I mean, I had a slightly weird experience just recently. I was applying to a startup, and I wish I had remembered the conversation better because it could have just fully been a misunderstanding on my part. But it was a front-end position. It was React Native, not Flutter. But they made clear that they mostly just wanted to test aptitude and were super happy for me to train up on React Native if I got the job. And he said, it's a HackerRank style question, but it's not data structures and algorithms as like my prep notes for the technical screening. And I should have asked him to clarify, because as far as I know, that's all HackerRank style questions are. I mean, maybe he meant it's not like well-known memorized algorithms, it's just like solve this puzzle. But that's basically what the questions were. I thought it was going to be an applied problem, like spin up a fast API server, because that's what they were using, was fast API. So I prepped for that.
Yeah.
And then I got some pretty basic algorithms-based HackerRank style questions. I was just so thrown off, I panicked and did a horrible job. And I was like 20 or 30 minutes in, and I was so tempted to just tell the dude, hey, we both know I'm bombing this right now. Why don't we just save ourselves the discomfort and the time and call it now? And I kind of wish I had. They didn't even get back to me after. And it's the kind of stuff that I know I can do well. I was just so caught off guard. But in the end, the hashtag vibes were a little off anyway. The guy felt super intense in kind of a weird, off-putting way. C'est la vie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to 35 minutes here. So I don't know how you want to tie this up.
I think I'm in a good spot to close out. I think I actually have my interview tomorrow. Let's run through that really quick. It's at VM, as I mentioned earlier. It's going to be a systems design, and then it's going to be some HackerRank stuff. Then it's going to be a product manager interviewing me, which I'm assuming is kind of product sense. And then I've got the engineering lead interviewing me, which I suspect is going to be my Riz check. And then it's the recruiter interviewing me. And the last one, of course, is just like purely sell you on the company. I think that's not even an interview. It's an office tour. So that should be interesting. I'll see how that goes. It seems like a reasonable lineup. It sounds like about what you would expect. The one thing I don't love is they didn't specify if the systems design interview is front end, full stack, or back end. It's a front end position, so I want to assume front end. But I'm a little scared I'll walk into it and it'll be like, design the Twitter backend.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's
so I ended
such a
up
funny
just
thing for
prepping
front
both.
end.
Yeah, I prepped both. I will be pretty annoyed if it's a backend system design. I think I'll handle it fine, but I'll be annoyed because it's just like, guys, why are you giving me this? This has like no relation to the job, given that it's not even full stack, it's front end only. But I looked the guy up.
I would be
LinkedIn
like,
stalked
this is a
the guy.
monolith written in Rust, and it's on a massive computer. This is my systems design.
There you go. But I looked the dude up, and it looks like he's front-end centric, so that pretty strongly suggests I'll be getting a front-end systems design.
Hopefully it'll be front-end. Hopefully it'll be a front-end design problem. The interesting thing is that like so many packages now make like just kind of throw mobile architecture like on its head. And so it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun to like take a bunch of interviews and A/B test different frameworks in the context of a systems design interview to see which one people like the most. The advice I got from my friend who does pretty well at this and is at one of the bigger Flutter app startups, he strongly recommends Flutter Block just because it's not that opinionated, but still has enough in the box that you can really move fast. And he gave me a mock interview that was a cool format where he gave me the systems design interview, and then the coding interview was, okay, let's take your systems design interview and build it, which I thought was a cool combo. Cool. Also on the on-site, though, he eviscerated me in the mock interview, so, but hey, that's on me, not him.
Yeah, there it goes.
Cool. So let's wrap it up. I'll see how I do tomorrow. With any luck, I'll be moving to New York within like a month, I think. I'm looking at apartments.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. It'd be fun to have you East Coast.
Yeah, we could do like an in-person Ship Fam episode.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. We'll
Cool.
go
Later.
split a bed and breakfast in Vermont.
Nice. I love it. No, we got to make friends with like a place in the Hamptons or something, or upstate.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Cool. Talk to you later, man. See ya.